Well, it's the culmination, of course, of years of planning, an event that's been decades in the planning. And quite frankly, the operation around London, around central London, is bigger than any of us ever seen. The biggest security operation that London and the United Kingdom has ever seen. Tens of thousands of security forces, the police, the army, all involved in as well in what will be the first state funeral, of course, since 1965, when we saw Sir Winston Churchill, who had his state funeral. Other people who are not of the royal family who had state funerals include Sir Isaac Newton and the Duke of Wellington. The last royal state funeral was of course, the Queen's father, George VI, in February 1952. We're outside the most magnificent building, perhaps in London, many would argue, and that is Westminster Abbey, just a short stone's throw away from the Houses of Parliament. And of course, within the Houses of Parliament, we have Westminster Hall, where the Queen, for the last 4 days, Her Majesty, has been lying in state, of course, and we've seen a phenomenal sight of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people lining up, queuing miles upon miles along the south bank of the River Thames, just to my right here, just to the south of where I'm standing as well, in order to get a glimpse of Her Majesty. As far as the dignitaries are concerned, they're coming from all over the world. Westminster Abbey will take circa 2,000 mourners from 11 o'clock today, and those mourners will include up to 500 heads of state and dignitaries, including some of the most important people on the planet. So you can imagine the security operation from Metropolitan Police and from the other police forces is absolutely enormous. We had the US President yesterday, Joe Biden, signing the Book of Condolence at Lancaster House. Also, he paid his respects to Her Majesty the Queen in Westminster Hall as well. And then with other dignitaries and leaders, including President Macron, of course the Australian Premier as well, New Zealand Premier, and from around the world, a host of others as well, attending a function last night at Buckingham Palace, the first function hosted as King by Charles III. In terms of what's happening here today, well, of course, it's coming up now to 6 a.m. local time. Around about 30 minutes after that, the last members of the public who have been filing past Her Majesty's coffin will finally leave Westminster Hall, the House of Parliament, and then the doors will shut on that part of the proceedings. From 8 a.m. The Westminster Abbey will open for the first dignitaries and guests to start arriving. We know, of course, that the service will start at 11 a.m. local time, and that will be preceded from 10:44 by the state gun carriage carrying Her Majesty the Queen's coffin, followed by members of the Royal Armed Forces and indeed the Royal Family, moving the very short distance, a few hundred yards, from Westminster Hall in the House of Parliament to here, Westminster Abbey. The service will be relatively short, lasting around about 55 minutes, and it will be conducted by the Dean of Westminster. There will be sermons from the likes of the Right Honourable Archbishop of Canterbury. The Prime Minister will deliver a reading, as indeed will Baroness Scotland, who is the Secretary General of the Commonwealth as well. And right at the end of proceedings, there will be the last post sounded, and then 2 minutes silence, and then a rendition of God Save the King.